This is Dharma Drops with your host, Rebecca Warfield. This podcast is a little bit about yoga, a little bit about life, and a little bit about whatever. And just as a warning, this podcast is unscripted, so that means I might regret a few things that I say. But hey, maybe I'll say some pretty awesome stuff too. Remember, these are musings, not truths. Buckle up, giddy up, because here we go. And really, what I tell everyone that's on the podcast, we can do whatever we want. This is our show. We can do whatever we want.
That's what I've been saying a lot in my life recently. I can do whatever I want.
It is true. You really can do whatever you want as long as you're not interfering with anyone else's safety and well-being. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. As long as your higher self is hopefully guiding that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess there's two ways of looking at that. You can do whatever you want from the lowest level of self, and you can do whatever you want from the highest level of self. They're two different things.
Exactly. That's the differentiation. Amen.
Well, I feel like this is a good time just to get the episode started. Yeah.
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, welcome back, Dharma Drops guests. My name is Rebecca Warfield, and I'm here with my new friend, Michelle, who you might see in the social media posts as Swan Michelle from Swan River Yoga. How's it going, Michelle?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I reached out to Mary, who is your student and who's also one of my teachers.
Yay!
I reached out to her, was it yesterday, about maybe recording with you. And here we are, I think 24 hours later, making it happen.
I love it. This is divine timing, and I'm excited to come to Wilmington. I've never been there.
I was just about to ask if it was your first time. So it is your first time in Wilmington. And where are you located currently?
I have primary residence in New Orleans. I own 3 yoga studios there.
Oh.
And it's Swan River Yoga. And this is where Mary was also a teacher and did her yoga teacher training. And then I also live in Pensacola, Florida, right on the beach on an island. And so from here, I teach all up and down the Gulf Coast region, and primarily offering trainings in sound therapy and also in energy clearing or energy medicine. Those are my 2 favorites.
Awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got involved in sound therapy? Because most of the guests on the podcast are definitely into yoga, but I think you're the first person in 27 episodes who specializes in sound therapy. So this is brand new for the Dharma Drops audience.
I love this. Yay. Well, really sound is, if we deeply go back into the origin of yoga, sound is the very first form of yoga. And even if we think of sensory organs of perception, for most of us, when we're even in utero, it is listening that is developed first. And from listening comes all of the other sensory organs of perception, which are a really important part of also of Ayurveda as well, and in relation to the 5 elements. So when we're tapping into sound or sound therapy, it comes from Nada Brahma is the name. It's one of the main paths of yoga. And Nada Brahma specifically, my sort of inception into being deeply interested in it was by living in New Orleans, which is a funny thing because everyone thinks of New Orleans sloppy and a bit hazy. And to have the lucidity and clarity of listening, really it was induced from being there and being around so many different sounds. And now, of course, me being into yoga, I'm thinking, well, I can't really always go out all the time and listen to bar or go to bars so much anymore. It's just not really my thing.
Right.
And I was in a deep meditation one evening, and all of a sudden it was just like, you should offer sound more just as the practice, as what yoga actually is. If the original yogis, if their first action was listening, then there could also be this really conscious way of there's no haziness in this environment. It's more about clarity. It's more about presence and the sensitivity of really hearing and getting struck with all of the variances of sounds and vibrations. And I think that really the beings in New Orleans took to that pretty quickly. Right away, the sound baths were just massive. And it was just nice to have a more stillness-based practice that where everyone's lying down and they're actually really listening. And it's kind of a precious thing to share.
That's really interesting that you mention this idea that, sound is really the first sense that we have, because I have a couple of thoughts about this. I've actually been taking notes as you're talking because I'm like, I have so many things I want to share. One, it's not beyond me that my mom, when she was pregnant with me, spent many, many hours reading to me. And I then later ended up with a bachelor's and a master's degree in literature. It solidified who I am. And I'm really confident of that. Like hearing literature and good literature too along the way, I really think solidified who I am. But I've also been thinking so much about listening in our culture lately. So I know you and I don't know each other that well. And most of the Dharma Drops listeners probably already know this. But I teach yoga at UNCW here in Wilmington, and I also teach English. And working with young people, I am just sold that the forgotten sense right now culturally is sound. That we've been so distracted by images and scrolling and our phones. I watch my students and I feel like they can't hear me. And I've been working really hard with them in class to have them stop looking around to see what's happening and really listen. And it's been an interesting experiment. So do you feel like you're experiencing this with people you're working with, like they're disconnected from sound, or maybe is it the opposite?
Oh my goodness. Those are sadly funny, beautiful points. Yeah, we are so overstimulated with all of our senses at this point that many of our senses are kind of just frayed and dulled, and we're completely scattered, and it's incredibly difficult to be present for that reason, and it really does just wear on the nervous system. So I think even it comes down to some of the diagnosis that many younger generations even have in terms of being labeled as something. A lot of it has to do with this oversensory stimulation and cell phones and Fox News and all the things that we're bombarded with, listening to and hearing, that it's really difficult to reduce and to refrain from. It's a contagion and an addiction. So often at first it's commonly in my yoga studios, at least, more adults. And so I think that they get like refreshed when they see that we don't allow cell phones near their
right.
yoga mat, and that there's a point in time where you have to like consciously make yourself not do some things as the beginning of having and calling back the control of your mind. But starting so young like that, it's dangerous because the mind is still developing. Really, sound and listening, a lot of it has to do with even allowing the synapses of the neurotransmitters of the brain fire off so that there's more homeostasis in the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Literally, like a lot of these things that we're tapping into with clear, clean sounds and listening to one sound at a time has measurable evidence-based highlights of improving the state of the mind, like quite literally. So it does not surprise me that you're experiencing that. It's sad, but it's like we also all have to take responsibility for training ourselves to reduce, because if we're doing one thing at a time, it's so refined and there's so much depth there, and it's this invitation to eventually then listen to your intuition, listen to what's going on inside of your brain. Like how is it you speak to yourself inside? So it keeps going deeper and deeper. Like, are you kind when you speak internally, let alone what we're listening to on the outside? So it's like training yourselves to upgrade what it is we're listening to.
Yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful point that we can listen from the outside, but then, as you said, it moves deeper and deeper into really listening to, like you said, what we say to ourselves. But I think it even helps us, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it helps us start to listen to that really important question: who am I? What am I doing here? And giving us some clarity and consciousness about that. Who are we in this world, and what are we doing? And are we going back to the very beginning of the episode? Can we listen closely enough to act and serve as our highest selves?
Oh, yes, that's the confluence. Like that's us being equal in vision and mind. And then once we're able to do so, we then can act upon it. So what we're doing and what we're saying eventually then merges. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no gap.
Right.
We're actually, when we're doing something, we mean it. And there's a clarity in our overall communication of expression within our lives. So it's really, truly, it's like a scouring out of consciousness to really become more subtle, to appreciate, to even take the time to pause, to slow down, to receive. I mean, those are all actions of listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's busyness that, or multiplicity, complexity that often gets the brain to overwhelm itself and for us to sort of be dulled to our environments.
Yeah, and I think we often use busyness as a way to not listen, to not hear. I mean, I'm guilty of this because sometimes you don't really want to hear what needs to be said inside. In fact, today, I went to the first time in my life, I went to a salt cave, which was really interesting. Have you been to one before?
Yeah, we have one in our studio.
You do? Okay,
Yeah,
cool. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm
yeah,
actually recording from the salt cave tomorrow morning. And so that'll be kind of cool.
that's
But
awesome.
in the salt cave, there was a little bit of music and a little bit of like white noise happening. I don't know. I don't know the mechanics of it, but there's like a thing running that puts some, I don't know, ionized air out or something.
Yes.
And, there was like a little bit of noise, but it was so quiet in there. And for a long time, I felt pretty relaxed. And suddenly the chatter started. And then I couldn't get the chatter to stop. So then I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe we should figure out what this chatter means. And so the longer I sat there, of course, the chattier things got. But I actually feel that in that moment of stillness and quietness, I could really deduce to some truth within my life that I cannot really hear or pay attention to when I'm so busy day in and day out. There's no time to listen. So it took sitting in a salt cave for 45 minutes to get there.
Uh, I feel like with listening, what for me, the outcome of it is honesty.
Mhm.
So I would prefer to know in the end if I'm a true yogi and I want to get to the truth of all things eventually, even if I'm not there yet, I too get confused and I too buy into busyness. But I would prefer that in the end that I trust myself and I've been honest with myself and I've really heard how it is I'm speaking to myself,
Mhm.
how it is, what it is I'm drawing towards listening to. I mean, there's such an honesty and that quality of reception.
For
So I think
sure.
if you were disturbed for a bit, but you didn't run out of the salt cave,
I didn't. I
you
stayed
did
in there.
good. Yeah, you kept listening because it keeps going deeper. There's so many layers to it. It's like we're getting to the source of what the disturbance is really. But in the end, all of us have to hear that for ourselves, truly.
For sure. And it takes a little work to get there, I think. I mean, had I been in that salt cave 10 years ago, I would have been out of there. 5 minutes gone. Though,
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of introspective internal work over the last half decade. It's been, I guess, 5 years since I consistently started practicing yoga. I dabbled in and out of it for a long time, but consistently started practicing. And really, I probably wasn't ready for it until recently to really sit in there for 45 minutes and take it in.
That's the real work. That's like spiritual, I mean, mental aerobics, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like getting into the real girth and muck of where the static and the frenetic chaos is within the mind. I mean, not
Mm-hmm.
everyone's even really truly honestly ready for that. So sometimes like for instance, like a sound bath, it's like a soft way, it's a soft entry in, because there are some sweet sounds around you to soften the edginess
Mm-hmm.
of the chatter or the cruelty or the critique or the judgment or whatever's going on in the mind that's not allowing for us to be present. It's sort of like the crystal bowls or the gongs will sort of, in the gong's case, sort of get those thoughts to crash in a way.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's with the crystal bowls, it just depends. They all have different effects. But it's like these other vibrational frequencies enter into very specifically in the brain where something is anesthetized or frozen. And so it's spinning in a loop, like a thought that's perpetual. And we call that, a vritti in yoga from the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. It's just like a deep samskara or imprint that we can't seem to knock. So it's like these really sweet, high vibrational frequencies, all with different measurements and all of very incredibly pure tones. Instead of like talking about it all the time, which we also sometimes need, or other forms of therapy just have different effects. This is like going in a very non-biased, very neutral way. So it's going right into those places within your brain where there's something perpetually disturbing, be it soft or quite loud. So it's beautiful to see often someone after a sound therapy session, it's unexplainable. And literally it is unexplainable because really what's happening is so big and cosmic, it can't really be encased in words at some point.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I've been to sound bath a number of times and I feel like it's actually been a while since I've been to a sound bath. Maybe I'll come to your sound bath. Actually, you're teaching while I'm teaching on Friday, so I can't come to your sound bath.
It's sold out, I guess.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We'll be in the same building, so maybe I can like listen from afar.
Yeah. If you're in the same building, you'll definitely hear at least some of the crystal bowls. They're strong.
But I remember in sound bath feeling that sort of softening, like singing bowls, chimes. That's my favorite part. I love the chimes, the softening. And then there are these more abrupt sounds that didn't actually affect me much, but I've heard other people say, especially in reference to the gong, like I can't handle the gong. Like the gong is too much. The gong kind of freaks me out. And I never really thought about it until now when you said it, but because that sound is tapping into it's obviously a different vibration that's bringing forth a different emotion that isn't as sweet as chimes and singing bowls.
Yes, exactly. I mean, each of the different tones have very specific measurements to their frequencies. So they're hitting into very different areas of consciousness within our body. All throughout the body or in the subtle body, we would relate to that as the chakra system or the nadis. So it's going right into where, like, what we'd call that is like a granthi. It's where there's been a crystallization of disturbance and it's held, it's bound within us. And wherever the instrument is going, it's trying to look for those components within our personal instrument where it's discordant, whereas things are stuck, where the energy isn't thriving and flowing. So if you think about, we're going into some of the disturbances, of course, some of those things are going to be disturbing. So, and really it also depends, like how it's presented can be soft or really abrasive. Sometimes I think though, even abrasive or things that are chaotic, it's not pleasant, but if we're ready for it, can still really break up something deep inside of us. So in sound therapy, we don't necessarily say that like discordant notes or minor chords or notes that like cacophony, like if we're hearing that in some of the overtones of the vibrational frequencies, we don't really necessarily say that's bad.
Right.
Like in a normal song or in something that's beautiful and melodious, you don't hear those in songs, but sound therapy is a little bit different. So if you see if you feel or hear a disturbance, I should say, we don't really think that that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's informative. And depending on our ability to handle, just like a meditation too, like sometimes we're so disturbed emotionally or mentally, we can't sit down and meditate either. It wouldn't be life affirming to do so in some cases. So in some cases, of course, it's not good for someone. But truly, we want to know where we are disturbed. Overall, truly, it's so sweet and cosmic and
Mm-hmm.
a loving experience. But I think it's interesting to note when a student comes up afterwards and they tell me what instruments they liked or didn't, what disturbed them or did not. And also the mantras, like some very specific mantras people really gravitate towards, but then some are too primal or kind of they feel dark to them, and some feel light and they like that better. So in a way, it's helping us too with our preferences and our aversions, truly.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you work with folks, I'm assuming most of the time in a sound bath, it's like a large public setting. But if you're working like one-on-one, or if someone wants to experiment with sound therapy on their own, is there a progression that one needs to go through? Or is it more like experimental trial and error to see, how different instruments, different sounds interact with the body and the mind?
If they see me privately, it's more, they come to me with because it's a form of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
They would come and they would tell me what it is that they're disturbed about, like what it is they would very specifically want to work on. So in general, in terms of it being sound as a form of therapy and not just a overall general sound bath, which has all kinds of different instruments and sort of like a mosaic of all of the beautiful sounds. But if it's a therapy session, originally sound therapy was created with the tuning forks and was tested with those that had PTSD and what they used to call, they don't so much now, shell shock,
Mm-hmm.
from those veterans that were coming back from the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And they were testing them out in many of the different psych wards, where they were noticing that many of them were calming themselves down in ways that couldn't always be described. And they didn't always want to talk about what they had seen or what they had been through. And doing some measurable studies, they realized, like, wow, this is actually, the amygdala was frayed or was not well developed. And now this has helped the emotional release through the amygdala, or this has released the sympathetic nervous system of a small component of a trauma that they're working on. And so now they're able to feel more embodied. And now we can talk more about what it is that was disturbing them. So it is progressive, but it's more about, very specifically as a form of therapy, the nervous system and the mental wellness. And they would come to me with a pathology or a very specific goal that they have. There's a lot of beings that also come to me with grief and with loss
Mm-hmm.
of those that they love that have left their bodies. So there's emotions that get stuck within us, like quite literally. And we're helping to work those out. Sometimes they don't want to talk about it, So it's this beautiful way to feel loved and feel that the other realms of existence that surround them, and this ethereal sort of embrace, along with the true scientific evidence-based facts of how this will bring harmony and homeostasis to their nervous system. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is really amazing. So, how did you then? I know you said that you really came to this in New Orleans, but how did you really begin working in sound therapy? Did you start in sound bath? Did you start working with yourself first? How did you come to this position?
Yeah, I would say first, kind of a wild story, but a really well-known band in New Orleans, the Morning 40 Federation. Definitely have to give them some props because there's the lead singer of the band is a glass blower. His name's Josh Cohen, and he gets wildly obsessed with glass and glass sculpture, and then got really wildly obsessed with crystal bowls. And I heard about it, and I was just really curious because I wanted to add to my sound bath. So I went to his studio, and he had like a warehouse full of like 200 or 300 crystal bowls.
Oh, whoa.
Like giant ones. And being in there, I sat down with him, and he showed me like how to do like Hertz measurement, how to figure out the Hertz measurement of something and which part of the nervous system it works on. He was like a mad scientist. It was so fascinating. And he had all of these books about Nada Brahma and yoga. And I didn't really know he knew anything about yoga. I'm like, where did you get all these books? And he's like, oh, well, the yogis know more about sound than anyone else. I'm like, whoa, dude, right on, you know. So we're playing all these different instruments, and he's showing me how to get them to oscillate and how they interact with one another, and teaching me all about the different frequencies and how they affect the nervous system. So it kind of actually started there. And so then I brought like 40 crystal bowls home to my yoga studio. And then it just kept escalating from there. Then I found a different teacher who's really into tuning forks. And he was one of the first ones to measure them and to bring them to the psychiatric ward that he was working in New York City. And he has just been with so many clients and assisted them specifically through PTSD. And I went to a few trainings of his and learned underneath him. And I just had no idea that like even different notes and how they affect the chakra system, the koshas, like all the things that I've been learning about. And all my teacher trainings, I'm like, oh my gosh, and how these different notes interplay with one another and how that will affect a very specific part of the subtle body. And so it really just kept growing from there. Then I went to Bali, India.
That's on my bucket list.
Oh man, music is everywhere. And there it's all metal orchestration. So they have all kinds of different gongs and different metal bowls, and they all have different tones to them that are very pure in their sound frequency, very high quality. So they just strike right into you. And it's sort of in that anahata sort of way. So the heart chakra is called the unstruck sound. So when something is that pure, it strikes into you in a way that it doesn't have the sort of negative feedback ultimately in the end. It's like undoing the negative feedback to get us to that unstruck place, like to magnetize us towards the original sound. And that's the point of really pure high vibrational instruments. And so even like when there's biorhythms or overtones that are very measured, and the Balinese know this from their gamelan instrumentation, they work inside of us in such a way like they're rearranging us on a cellular level. And so they know that it's pleasant to the ears for sure, but not always. Actually, some of it's kind of like a little creepy almost, or slightly disturbing, but sweetly and softly so, because it's bringing us our own instrument back to the anahata, back into orchestration, back into our divinity.
With 2020 just around the corner, many of us are figuring out our New Year's resolutions, goals, and intentions. And I'm here to tell you that no matter what your goals or intentions are for 2020, you can achieve them. Inside each of us, and that means even you listening, there is an inner light of infinite potential that can allow you to achieve anything that you want to achieve in this world. But sometimes the muck and the clutter of life gets in the way, and we lose sight of our inner spark. So that's why I'm offering a new program called Reclaim Your Inner Spark. This is a 4-week coaching program that will use the tools of mindfulness, ritual, and self-mentoring to help you dive within and reclaim that light so you can lead your life with your own infinite potential. This coaching program is not one where I will give you a bunch of tips and tools and all the answers along the way. Instead, using self-mentoring, what you will do is you will learn a systematic process that you can apply to any goal in your life, whether it's health, wellness, personal, professional, in your relationships, it doesn't matter. So this 4-week program will help you get clear, help you get balanced and centered, and teach you the ways to achieve any goals that you want in 2020 and beyond. Over the course of 4 weeks, you will receive weekly or bi-weekly individual coaching sessions, 4 weekly ebooks that detail the self-mentoring steps and daily practices, journal prompts and supplemental information, 4 guided audio mindfulness practices, a program kit that includes a journal and 2 hand-bundled rosemary smudge sticks made right here in my kitchen, and the ability to keep all the materials for life, and of course, trust, support, feedback, and a whole lot of love. Registration is now open, and it's open on a rolling basis, but go ahead and register soon because there are limited spaces available. So head over to shopdharmadrops.com, that's shopdharma, DHARMA, shopdharmadrops.com, and register for Reclaim Your Inner Spark so you can learn the steps and process to achieve any goal your heart desires in 2020 and beyond. I like what you said about unstruck. So there's these parts in the yoga practice, whether it's in like asana or in the readings and the scriptures, where sometimes I feel like I get it and then it's just gone. It's so fleeting, and for some reason, the unstruck, that's the part for me where I'm always like, I got it, and then gone. So I'm not sure what that says about my heart chakra, but I think that's a really lovely way to talk about it for sure.
I've had a few students like, what do you mean by unstruck? I mean, definitely it's not all the way conceivable with our logical brains.
Yeah.
Really, it's in a way, it's hearing the original voice within you.
Mm-hmm.
It is so striking. It doesn't even really need feedback.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't need to bounce off of anything from which to then get validation of its truth. It's like, have you yourself ever had a moment where you're indecisive and some answers or some ideas sound clear and then later they don't, and you're just a little bit mixed or confused?
Oh my God, I feel like that's every day of my life, I swear.
Yeah, right?
Every decision I've ever had to make.
I mean, geez, like all of us, we go through that all the time. So many choices on a daily basis. But then if you every once in a while had such an unbelievably striking sound or idea within you that you're like, whoa, like, whoa, that one, I don't even think I thought of that. That was definitely my higher self thinking of that. And that is so striking, so clear and pure that there's just no denying it.
I forget who said this to me. It was someone in my personal life, like my boyfriend's mom or a friend. I can't remember. And really recently, it might have even been a podcast guest for all I can remember. But I remember whoever it was said they were talking about something similar. And they were like, it's like it comes down from the universe and it's downloaded. And I was like, oh yeah, I know that feeling. Like it's not from you anymore. It's from something that is of you, but it's not that sort of chatty brain, at least my chatty brain that goes through about 800 decisions. It just arrives.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Exactly it. It's clean. It's simple. You hear it and it brings you more energy. And you feel more inspired instantly. There's just no question or no doubt. That to me is, because we're filled with doubts. I mean, and so much chatter and so much feedback we're getting from everything around us. It's like this is the way to like cut through all of that. So really in the end, we're drawing ourselves more and more towards the unstruck sound by the practices of sound therapy and of listening, truly.
It's so interesting. I've always enjoyed sound baths. And I mean, I have a harmonium and I play the harmonium, but I actually don't know a tremendous amount about sound therapy. And this has been really enlightening for me and some of my own experiences, just, playing the harmonium, being in a sound bath, or just I'm a dancer too, so I've always felt a little connection to sound. And now I'm really curious to know what this means about my energetic makeup at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to moving a little deeper into this in my own practice.
Oh, yay. Well,
Yeah.
if we think about it, we're all vibrating in a very specific frequency right now. And then when you do a yoga practice, you change your vibrational frequency.
Hmm.
And if you go watch Fox News, you change your vibrational frequency. If you drink a beer, you're vibrate. It all is about vibration, really.
Hmm.
You hang out with certain people and beyond your preferences. Some people light you up and can't explain it. Sometimes you feel really low bass and you can't explain it. It's all vibration. Sometimes you clash with people and you can't even explain why, and they didn't say anything weird, or there's nothing wrong. It's not right or wrong even, but we're all changing our vibrational frequencies all the time. So it's
Hmm.
really, to me, it's a cool way to like not even take things all the way personally.
Yes.
We're all the time changing our vibration. It's either upgrading or it's sort of severed and degrading, but it's neutral to think of it in terms of vibration.
One of my favorite things about teaching yoga or even being in a yoga class is noticing the difference in the ohms from the beginning of class to the end of class. Because very often when the class ohms in the beginning, there's some folks who are like off key and some are louder than others. And, like it's like a little disheveled. But then by the end of the class, everyone's on the same page. And it's like this perfect harmonious ohm.
That's it. It's just like that. It's, everyone's been moving together to finely tune themselves and to process what they're going through. Also, there's a group collective energy.
Hmm.
I mean, by the end, also, there's a bit of entrainment, and we kind of pick up on one another's vibrational frequencies,
Hmm.
whether we like that or not. And then by the end, there's a collective energy that's been upgraded because we're moving consciously instead of just doing these things unconsciously all the time, taking things in, letting negative thoughts just rule us. And then the mind is unruly, and then our actions are unconscious. They're not mindful anymore. So it's really like you've elevated everyone by elevating yourself in a group setting like that. It will change the ohm. That's why you hear that the ohm is
Hmm.
changed.
Hmm. In what I like to call my pre-yoga life, I would always, oh, I shouldn't say always, I would meet people who I felt like, I don't know if I like them that much. And usually I would respond in anger or frustration or judgment, then flash forward to post yoga life. And we cultivate such a sensitivity in yoga that I think we're able to understand these vibrations a little bit better, not just our own, but others. And I really appreciate through my own yoga practice and what I've been taught by my teachers, what these vibrations are, and that we can move at a higher vibration and a lower vibration. And sometimes we're just not jiving, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just teaching me about that person and teaching me about myself. And then I get to make the decision how to adjust. Maybe that means I have to step away, or maybe it means I have to adjust my own energy levels to understand and be compassionate for that person too.
Beautiful. It is like that, especially as a yoga teacher.
Hmm.
I would say it's important that, we can't judge students or ourselves. We're students in the end too. When
Hmm.
someone's creating a shift, like going through the shift, often things are going to reveal themselves and come up.
Hmm.
Part of growing and confronting. It's back to that honesty thing
Hmm.
again, but if we can still be in a neutral position as a yoga teacher, it gives everyone the space at least, of acceptance, to allow everyone sort of in that orchestra to have the space to change, to allow them to shift their own vibration, to work through it themselves. And we're just holding space for that. But yeah, it's not so personal that way anymore. It's far more accepting.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing to be a part of as a yoga teacher. It's also very difficult too. There's definitely this conception that yoga teachers are just chill all the time and everything's good. It's often very difficult to hold that space. And sometimes, I've gone through some things recently. My health was not great for a number of weeks and I couldn't hold the space. So I had to actually take some time off and let someone else teach the classes for me because I just couldn't do it. And I think that it's hard, and it's really important for people to remember that even the yoga teachers, like you said, we're students too. We're also working with this stuff day in, day out, trying, to learn and be the best that we can be in the practice.
Beautiful. That's a good point. That's sort of what we're also going to be working on when I come is our energetic hygiene and how we carry ourselves. And to even as a yoga teacher, if like if I'm in a pretty shitty mood or not feeling so good, I work extra hard for a few hours to do all the things I know. Like I'll play crystal bowls, I'll do the tuning forks, I'll do my asana practice, meditation, mantra, eat a clean diet, and work with trying to change my own vibrational frequency on my own, energy clearing practices that I do. And if I can't, I find someone to teach for me. But it's knowing what it is we're carrying ourselves as yoga teachers, especially there's more and more yoga teachers on the planet. Yeah. And what we're bringing with us, we have to know what that is. It's not always so easily seen or perceived with the eyes. We're all carrying around this memory bank of karma and thought forms, and all of those resonate at something. And if we're not able to be clear enough to be in the presence of others, and we're not able to access positivity and a healthy mind, and we can't be kind to others, sometimes energy work has helped me because energy moves faster than the physical body. So I'll do some sort of personal energy clearing techniques that we're going to work on when I'm there. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's just 10 minutes. And I'm like, there I am. Because I don't always have 2 or 3 hours to go through the whole thing of like, I gotta get out into nature. I gotta do an hour and a half of yoga. And sometimes I need a little bit of an extra boost. And so I've been so grateful to work with the subtle body more so that I'm able to teach far more consistently and in a way to where then weird shit isn't coming out of my mouth as I'm teaching. Like I'm pretty much keeping it together, and even though an hour before I was having a really hard time in my relationship or something like that. It's just like real life stuff because all of us are clearly students, but we have to take responsibility for what it is we're bringing with us wherever we go. We're either uplifting the place no matter where we go, or it's sort of like we're degrading it in some way. It's kind of our responsibility to not do that.
Yeah. And I think if we allot ourselves the time to get our energy right, and in my case too, is my health. I had some physical health problems and also some heart health, not like physical heart, but like the energetic heart problems. There's just some sensitive stuff happening in my life at the time, and I just couldn't move past it. But, I took almost 7 weeks actually. Oh no, that's not true. It was almost 5 weeks off from teaching. And when I came back, I felt really good. And I felt like that recently I've been able to teach and serve my students better than ever before. But I just couldn't do that before. I was frustrated. People were coming to my classes sick, and then I got sick and I was mad and I didn't want to go teach because everyone was going to be sick, and like, it was just like one thing after the next. And so it was the right thing to do. It really was. I was a little bummed, but it was the right thing to do, to step away for a few weeks and get back. And I feel better than ever teaching my classes. It's exciting.
Yay.
Mm-hmm.
That's you being responsible. If you know that, it would be irresponsible to still kind of come and to bring all of your stuff with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, in a way, there's times in our lives. I mean, there's so many changes that happen in our lives all the time. There's times where things will be difficult emotionally or physically. We need to step back and fine tune and really check in with where those things are and attend to ourselves. That's what we would tell a student, right?
Absolutely. I'm having this memory that I've forgotten about from being a teenager. Because I was just thinking about how our culture doesn't really allow this. If I were you now, I will say, for the folks who I teach yoga for at UNCW and the College of Health and Human Services, they're amazing. But in some of the other departments, I couldn't be like, hey, energetically, I'm a disaster. I can't be here today. That wouldn't fly. And just had a memory when I was a teenager at my first job. I worked at the Play Place McDonald's area. It was awesome. I got to play in the ball pit and serve cake and have birthday parties for a job. I should never have quit. But I remember I broke up with my first boyfriend. And I was so heartbroken. And I was like crying and crying and crying, like teenage girl style. And I told the manager there, I was like, I just really need to go home. And she was like, really? Because hearts are broken every day. And walked away. And it really shut down, like, oh, I'm not allowed to feel this way. And everything has to be tucked inside and I have to go to work, which sometimes you do have to do. But I totally forgot about that until now. And I think it's really set a tone for just the poker face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's right there. I think even in that case, if back to the anahata, sometimes, of course, we still have to go to work. We don't always have the luxury to not.
Sure.
But someone, the anahata is also about the generosity of spirit and compassion. If at least that would have been articulated, it would have softened and given you some sort of understanding of like, oh, wow, other people are in pain as well. Like more of like you feel now interconnected to them as opposed to shut off, isolated, broken down. And that's, again, it's like only being and residing within our heart, in the wisdom heart, and then in the anahata, would anyone be able to exemplify something like this. And it's always so well received, just to have a level of generosity of heart and compassion. Those are high frequencies. So even in terms of energy medicine, emotions all have very specific energetic vibrational enumerations to them. Like shame is the lowest one.
Interesting.
And then the highest one, it starts to get to like peace. And then the highest one is actually joy. And joy is different from happiness. But joy comes from inside. And it's when we're able to really understand what anyone's going through, and we can reach out to them and have full embrace of compassion and understanding. But it doesn't diminish us in which to do so, because the joy has like this really high sort of high pitch and effervescence to it, to where you can hear hardships of others and you can understand when they're having a really difficult time, and you can hear it. You don't try to turn it off yourself. You can hear their hardship, but you're not taking it on. So it's really just in that case, often when we're hearing difficult news or the emotions of others, if we can't hear it all the way, it's because we still have a lot of those low vibrational emotions still lodged within us, and they're shut down, they're repressed. That's affecting the autonomic nervous system. It's dulling the subtle body, which is the pranamaya kosha.
I was just thinking back to my recovered memory from McDonald's. In hindsight, if I could go back and be that person again or talk to my teenage self again, what I really want to hear is, I understand and I'm really sorry.
Exactly.
That's it. That's all I needed to hear. And I think that's all most of us ever really want to hear. I don't know if anyone ever really, maybe some people, but I think most of us don't desire special treatment. I don't think most of us desire more money or more time off. I think most of us want to be heard and understood.
Yeah, there it is again. It's just what a beautiful gift to give someone, is just letting them speak about a hardship for 5 minutes, even so they're heard. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Back to That's true listening. It's the highest of all the yogic practices, in my opinion. It's the wisest, closest connection we have to our Atma, or to our higher self. And the Atma will always be kind and understanding, and only has that's the one preference only that it really has. And all of the other lower base fears and degrading, profane sort of chaos and conflicts, that's not any sort of trait of the Atma and
Mm-hmm.
of the higher self at all. So when we're imbibing in higher vibrational feelings or emotions, we're stepping closer to our original makeup, our original identity. And that will always feel like we're thriving. And it feels higher, but not in a hierarchical way.
Mm-hmm.
This feels like we've been like light is pouring into the mind and illuminating us, illuminating and shifting the vehicle in which or the instrument that we're walking around in.
Mm-hmm. This is really beautiful. I feel like this conversation, which was kind of a surprise, I wasn't planning on recording with you, and then it just sort of happened. I feel like this has come at just the right time in my life. I'm
Oh,
really excited to be here recording with you.
I'm so glad. Good. Me too. I love this. These are
Mm-hmm.
my favorite topics.
Mm-hmm. And since I've been hosting a podcast, I launched in February of this year. And I think we've had 26, 27 episodes now, and I do all my own editing. And I've come to learn, I've always kind of known this about myself because I'm from the Mid-Atlantic and that area is sort of known for interrupting. But it wasn't until I started editing my own podcast that I realized I interrupt all the time. And so actually one of my goals lately has been to listen more and talk a little less, which is kind of ironic because I have a podcast and I'm talking, but I feel like I could be a better listener. And so I think this has come at just the right time.
I love that honesty. That's again what listening is being honest and then articulating with clarity where it is even that we might even be working on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
if we've discovered that. And I think that you're right. Like you made a comment, something about, we assume all yoga teachers are calm or have it together. It's
Mm-hmm.
not true. It's more like we're honest. Like
Yes.
that's a sign of really of evolution. It's not, we're not glazing over, but also we don't need to necessarily be incredibly reactive either, and that create more chaos with what it is we're working on. But there is an honesty and a refinement in the honesty that we're willing to pause, to confront, and to listen to. And you just did that. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's one great way to pause and listen to yourself, record yourself and edit
Yeah,
your own
right?
podcast. It's the first time I listened to one, I was like, what am I even talking about? And why am I interrupting so much? It's
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've heard some recordings of myself as well, and it's always humbling, and there's something to be learned from that as well. It's incredibly informative.
It is informative, and I feel like I shouldn't dog myself so hard because it is true. I do interrupt a lot and I say like way more than I should. But then sometimes I'll record podcasts and I'll go back and listen to it. And I'm also really proud of the work I've done. I think sometimes we get really wrapped up in fixing and changing. And it's important to pay attention to where are we vibrating high and where are we doing well? And how can we continue to cultivate that too?
Yeah, really, it's not about perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're in a human body, we're going to be working on things really this whole entire lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, I mean, there's an inspiration. You're doing something positive, and you care, and you're doing your best and putting forth your best effort. So in the end, it's like there's this beautiful mantra. Hopefully Mary and I will sing it together. It's Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnam Udachate, Purnasya, Purnam Adaya, Purnam Eva Vashish Shate. And basically it's coming back to perfection, but not perfectionism. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we can say this is perfect. We can also say that over there is perfect. But in the end, never can the perfection or the wholeness truly be taken away from.
Mm-hmm.
So what is ever negated is not meant to be. It will dissolve. It's not serving the higher self. But even in the end, that transmutates into what was needed at the moment and is still a form of perfection. But I really like to think of this in terms of when we get down on ourselves. It's like I'm not here to be like in a state of perfectionism. That's not the point of my existence. But I do care, and there is a eloquence of wholeness and just pure perfection in that in and of itself. And that's even this podcast. That's exactly what the point of this is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I hope is the point of the whole show. I really started Dharma Drops to really embrace the wholeness, the fullness of life, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the whole nine yards, and that it is part of our entire experiences. And it's not right, it's not wrong, it's not good or not bad. It just is.
Exactly. All the parts to the whole. You nailed it. That's it.
Mhm. This has been so awesome. So, do you have anything else that you want to share about sound therapy, energy, this subtle body? As I mentioned in the beginning, we can do whatever we want. So, if there's anything else you want to share, please do, because I'm having such a good time.
Oh, I love this. I would say that in terms of any students or yoga teachers, but actually, now that I think about it, all beings, and they don't even have to necessarily consider themselves a yogi, um, that along with once we start training ourselves to reduce and to be pickier about what we're listening to, then we're going to also free our voice. So
Mm,
one last quote I'd love to leave everyone with is, instead of owning your voice, free your voice, which means the higher self is now, or the your soul, or the original grace of you, whatever the word is for you, is now speaking through you. And you'll be
mm,
more clear, more precise. You'll mean what you say far more. And it all comes down to, as well, being picky on a daily basis. Like, don't look at every single thing on the internet. Reduce the text messages with clarity. Get out of any time there's a temptation to gossip, or you're about to say something really bad about someone. Really work on, if we're working on our states of mindfulness and consciousness, after listening comes articulation, and our articulating with clarity. And I think as more humans are doing yoga specifically, we're moving consciously. And when we do asana, this is a component, is listening, as we've spoken of in this whole podcast. But then I also think what we're writing in emails, what we're texting to one another.
mhm.
The ancient yogis and the forest dwellers, we weren't talking about text messages then. But all of this is still a part of vibrational frequency, and music and communication is also what we're saying and what we're speaking, and training ourselves to be lucid and to speak our truth, to be courageous in doing so as well, but also to work on it being honest, as I spoke about, and clear. It's been my life work as well, and especially as a yoga teacher, that's our main vehicle and our main instrument is our voice. So we can continue training ourselves to be really good leaders or community members or parents or any kind of teacher, any type of interaction. The way to keep our relationships uplifted in togetherness is to be honest about also what it is that we're saying and speak from a place of truth. It will upgrade our entire surroundings.
I like what you said about language, because I teach English. I've taught English now for 12 years at the university level, and I've taught, I don't know, 6 million writing classes. And I always tell my students, words have so much power. They have tremendous power over ourselves and others. But I actually didn't really know that until I really needed some extra money years ago. And so I took a job writing celebrity gossip, which was fun, for a little bit. But then these things started to happen in like the celebrity world, and I didn't feel good writing them. They were like kind of untrue. And the way that everyone was talking about the celebrities, it did not make me feel good. And I'd write them because I had to for my job. And then I'd close my computer and I felt physically kind of bad.
Yeah.
So I had to stop. I ended up quitting, and like the company was great. They're just doing what the industry does. I get that, but I had to stop because it did not feel good in my body. It didn't feel good in my heart.
Yeah. I mean, it's poison. It makes you sick. And that's like moving up to the chakra of the throat, the Vishuddha chakra. It's poison-free space is the literal translation of that chakra. It's the area of the throat, the neck, the mouth, the ears. And really it's toxic for us and for anyone to be so divisive, really. In the end, it literally degrades our immune system and makes us sick. And I think the more exposure we have to the depersonalization of like social media and so many things that we can look up so quickly, that it's really it's a form of sickness to like, now you can say whatever you want, and it's hurtful and it's harmful. It's still harmful.
Yeah, for sure.
It's still a form of cruelty, and it's still a form of communication. It's still a form of the Vishuddha chakra. So I think that that's the next stage, is once we've gotten into the wisdom of the heart consciousness of the heart, to then work on articulating that in a way that it can be honesty vital, but that it's still done with some creativity, some clarity, in a way that will still congeal and will interconnect us all. It's like really language, when it's low grade, it never really ends up serving a community in which to do so. Now, if we need to have difficult conversations, it's different, but it can be also done in a way that is creative, that we're actually collectively coming together for a true transformation. So all of these practices, sound therapy also, it's also a way to get into our true power center, which is our voice.
I really love that, we're talking about listening and moving through to the voice, because as you said, I mean, we're writing things on the internet all the time. We're doing things all the time. So this is a real opportunity for us to get clear with the things that we listen to and the things that we say. And I think there's no better time than right now for all of us collectively to be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a lot of honesty coming out, and I think that that's so incredibly important. There's been a lot of repression and beings told to literally shut up, right? And that's harmful. And now to articulate with honesty, as well as the creativity of like truly having an outcome that heals the planet and doesn't create further degrading and create more toxicity. It's like it takes a creative person in which to do so. It's coming out of the closet of honesty, and then doing it in a way that still could also potentially uplift mindfulness and open us all up and interconnect us in the end, and not further divide us. I think that's a really important part of sound. Sound is in the ethers, it's in space, literally, which in Sanskrit is the Akasha. And so sound, or the Akasha, is the ultimate of all containers. It's the most subtle one, so it's not as obvious. And that's right where sound is traveling into. So it doesn't always seem like sound has that much power, but it actually is traveling in the Akasha and in space. It's the thing holding us all together. It's the ultimate container of interconnection. So to me, it's sound that's actually literally in the end going to be what heals the planet, and could be a way to really truly bring us all together in the ways that we don't always agree, or the ways that unfortunately harm continues to perpetuate itself. I truly believe it's through sound that the ultimate of all therapies will bring us back into unification, which is the translation of yoga.
It's really beautiful. So Michelle, how can folks find you if they want to learn more about you and your offerings?
They can. I have two main websites. They can go to swanriveryoga.com. And there I'm the founder, and there's just numerous epic teachers there. And we do all kinds of retreats and trainings. But that's primarily, many of them are location bound to New Orleans. But I myself have my own personal website. It's Swan Michelle with 2 L's.com. And that shows where I travel all throughout the region. Primarily, like the Southeast region has been where I've been going the past few years. I've been teaching for over 20 years now. And then I go to Bali and India, and I'm going to Portugal, leading a retreat, in France, a retreat. So I do a lot of global things.
I love Portugal so much.
Cool. I haven't been to Portugal yet. We're doing the El Camino trail for...
Oh my gosh, that's my bucket list. I feel like I should go.
You should go.
When is it?
It is in July. It's mid-July. I'm doing South France first, and then we're going to take a plane over to Portugal and start in Santiago. And anyone's welcome to come. There's gorgeous opportunities coming for 2020.
Portugal is one of the best places I've been to. I've done a lot of global traveling, international traveling, and Portugal is amazing. So if anyone's listening, and in fact, I recorded a podcast episode with Andrea Markham in California. I guess it was 2 weeks ago now. And I told her that I would love to do a yoga retreat in Portugal sometime because I love Portugal so much. And then here you are.
Yay. See, words are powerful.
Yeah, they are powerful. I feel like I'm not joking. This episode has come at just the right time in my life.
Me too, truly. All of this stuff. I love reminding myself of these things too. It's important. Whenever I myself am tempted to speak something that's just not skillful, it's like these types of reminders. I'm like, no, it's never worth it. I rather speak something of clarity and of harmony whenever possible.
I was just kind of like joking to myself. I was like the master of not speaking skillfully. I'm like, always working on that. I have a tendency to just talk. And then later I think like, I probably shouldn't have said that. That's actually why this podcast, the intro to the podcast, it's like a warning that this is unscripted and I'm sorry.
Hey, this is another form of humanness and honesty too. And I totally dig it and admire it. It's cool.
Thank you.
Yes.
So for those of you listening, you can get all the links for Michelle's offerings in the show notes. Do you have any social media sites we can find you at?
Yeah, if you look up Swan Michelle, I will be there as well on Facebook and on Instagram.
Perfect. And for those of you listening, you can find me on Instagram. I just changed my handle. It used to be at Rebecca Warfield Yoga, but this isn't about me. It's about you. So I've changed my Instagram handle to at Dharma Drops _podcast. You can find me there and on Facebook at Dharma Drops. You guys know where to find me. Michelle, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored. And I can't wait to see everyone in North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. And that reminds me, before I forget, if you are in North Carolina or the surrounding area, you can come to Michelle's workshop at Long Wave Yoga here in Wilmington, North Carolina, the 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Yes. Training is all day Saturday. It's 8 hours, and we'll go through energetic hygiene techniques and learning how to cut cords, doing higher self meditation. We're going to learn how to do clearings quickly when we're feeling like low grade energy or low grade emotions or thoughts, and things and ways to train ourselves to sense and feel energy. And then on Sunday, we're doing a sound therapy training that's 4 hours long. And we'll work with tuning forks, crystal bowls, tonal drums, gongs, harmonium, and mantra.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the sound bath is Friday, but it's sold out. But whoever's coming, I can't wait because Mary and I are going to sing together.
Ooh la la. So if you want to go to the sound bath, it's sold out, but I do have a restorative class at 6. So you can come to my restorative class and I'll keep the music low so we can all kind of hear.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
Awesome. So that's December 13th, 14th, and 15th at Long Wave Yoga. And you can go to longwaveyoga.com and check out more information and register there. Michelle, this has been so great. Thank you so much. I can't wait to meet you when you're in town.
Thank you. I can't wait to meet you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, Dharma Drops listeners, until we meet again next time, bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Dharma Drops. If you want a little more Dharma Drops goodness, head over to dharmadropspodcast.com and sign up for the email list, because every month members of the email list receive exclusive content. In fact, last month for November, all the members of the email list got a free exclusive gratitude Dharma Drops episode. And it was only available via email. So if you're listening to this and you're not on the email list, you missed an episode. So head over to dharmadropspodcast.com. You can scroll to the bottom. You'll see a little form that you can put your name and your email address in, and you are on the list to receive exclusive Dharma Drops content. Also, please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Dharma Drops on whatever app you're listening on. When you do so, not only does it help support the podcast, but it's also a really great way to share Dharma Drops with others. Thanks for listening.